welcome to the SRAM Send It series out on Zwift. We have a series of 6 races that riders are competing in, focused in on the land down under and the top caliber racers from there and the community racing together out on Zwift. This week we've got a race out on the jungle circuit. We are going to be having a little bit of a journey out to one of the expansions on Watopia for 3 laps of the jungle circuit. A little bit of a climb heading on the way out there, and then we're going to be amongst some Mayan ruins. Got alongside of me, Mr. Pat Shaw, coming straight out of the land down under. Pat, welcome to the broadcast, and tell us a little bit of what you think about this week's racing.
Well, first, I think the greatest part about everything is that we've got like over 400 starters tonight. Over 65 women have signed up as well. And this just shows you just how much of that community aspect's passing on, because numbers are already getting higher than last week. And last week, they were already huge. But a lot on the line last week in the women's. Bree Wilson took the win and Cam Roberts in the men's. But remember, we've also got the community competitors as well, who probably put out a bigger showing than the National Road Series riders themselves.
Yeah, that was a pretty contested race last week, especially amongst the community riders showing up. This week, as well as every week, we will have most courageous rider each week. So be watching out for that. We'll be naming a most courageous rider amongst the community racers, as well as amongst the National Road Series racers that have been invited to the races out here today. So we got about 2 minutes and 27 seconds to go to the start of the race here at this point. And it looks like riders are 268 or so getting lined up for this. Warm up is key, Pat. Done some Zwift racing. I mean, speak to that a little bit about what these racers are up to as far as their warm up and why the crazy starts are so incredibly important.
Well, everyone knows that if you've got experience in Zwift racing, the best way to get a good race in is to get others on the back foot early. That's why we see these great accelerations out of the blocks. And I've got a couple of riders I coach racing this evening in the men's race. And the first thing I told them was get a good warm up in, do a couple of efforts around even threshold or above, just to get that hurt on a little bit. And look, it's integral. If you get in that front 30 riders early on, you're going to have a good result. And we saw that last week. Riders that got themselves 50 or 80th in the pack really struggled when those splits come at about the 30th and 40th wheel. So my advice to the riders out there, if you're tuning into the stream already, is get yourself up the front and get yourself up the front early.
Yeah, definitely super important. We do see on the right-hand side of the screen right now, the chat is there. But in just a moment, about 1 minute or so, we are going to see all of the racers nearby on the right-hand side. And when you start seeing those orange numbers in their watts per kilogram, how many watts they're putting out per kilogram of weight on their body, you see those orange numbers in that right-hand side on that rider's list in just a moment. And you know they are in an all-out sprint effort out there. And so it's going to be a battle to hang on from the get-go. I think things are most likely going to calm down, though, pretty quickly because it is a journey out to the jungle circuit. And before we hit the jungle circuit, there is this pretty steep climb heading on over there. You do the lower parts of the Watopia Mountain reverse, and we're seeing some gradients up into, I believe at some point it hits 11% or plus on there. Now, the jungle circuit itself, though, definitely has a little bit more of a gradual climb, but it is definitely a climb that's more of a VO2 max effort, and people can try and break things apart. But it's going to make things interesting because drafting does work a little bit on that climb. 7 seconds to go here. 323 riders in the men's race. Women's race starting in 2 minutes from now with 60 in the pens. But here we go for the men's race here in the SRAM Send It series. And like we said, those orange numbers kicking off. Ollie Jones, winner, I believe, from a week ago here, absolutely demolishing it here right from the get-go, and that's to be expected from the man Ollie Jones here, one of the Zwift Academy winners from the past here. We did see Feet and Me out there as well, coming from Oliver's Real Food Racing. That is one of the invited teams to the series out here and making his way to the front. With 300-plus riders here amongst this group, it's going to be a mad dash to make the initial break here.
Oh, 100% out of the blocks. You just got to be on it. And I saw Graham Brown on the start line too, so he's winding back the clock a little bit. It's great to see him amongst it. He's coaching a lot of riders too, so see how Brownie can go tonight. But you just got to look at this absolutely massive field, 320 riders. It's got to be one of the biggest races we've had on Zwift. And I'm just trying to find my way through these riders and see where they're sitting. You've got to be in this top 100 at the moment, and really you just got to stay on the pedals. I can see like 80 wheels back riders already putting out 6 watts per kilo just to keep up. And again tonight we've also got the likes of Raf Franstein and Albi Uyakwani riding at Rafa Clubhouse in Melbourne. In actual fact, they're riding at Zwift in Melbourne. So Wes Sulzberger looking over them there, making sure they got all their hydration. But I told them this week they need to make front group.
Front group is going to be super important to be involved at all in this race today. As you can see, the kind of paces that are being set at the front end here. You have Hedger here taking over the front out of the land down under. Now, the cool thing about Zwift, obviously, is that this is not just limited to the Southern Hemisphere, obviously, or just Australia or New Zealand, although that's a lot of the flags that we are seeing here. This is most definitely open to anybody that wants to jump into the racing here on Zwift, as we do see all of the riders here from all of the different countries. USA even represented here with some indoor specialists that are getting up extra early to be out there racing. I think some of them 5, 4, 3 a.m. even to be getting up and racing here amongst those from the Southern Hemisphere. Osterberg there to the front here. Forbes is there as well, as you can see. I believe that's at 16 years old. I'm seeing in the name there for Forbes. Pretty cool.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that actually. I just had a look before we rolled out of the start on Zwift Power. There's 12 riders that are under 19 years of age or younger. And it's fantastic to see. We see Jesse Norton out there tonight. We see Patrick Eddy out there as well. Most likely Sam Eddy, Pat's brother, he's there as well. They're 3 of Australia's best under 19 riders in the country, and they're getting in this series now and using it to sort of as a way of exposing themselves to the level of racing that they're going to have to get used to if they want to race at a national domestic level, and then also go the next step as an under 23 and potentially race in the international scene. We've seen recently the under 23 team for Australia announced for the Tour de l'Avenir. For those that don't know, that's Tour de l'Avenir means Tour of the Future riders. And that's a great way of these younger riders being inspired, that they see that there's a good team going there. That's an opportunity and something to aspire to in the future. There's plenty of great riders that come out of Tour de l'Avenir. And we're very lucky that Nick White, who is Australian, ex-Australian Zwift champion, and also was part of the Zwift Academy in which Ollie Jones won. He was part of the 3 finalists. So he'll be in that team. So it just shows you just how much Zwift has become a component of the riders' preparations.
Absolutely. Now, as you're seeing here, Ollie Jones, the Kiwi here, well-known racer out on Zwift, obviously, here, 155 beats per minute, sitting in a little bit here, but knowing that this is a section where you could find yourself off the back here, a little 3% gradient that does head up out of Ocean Boulevard here in this men's race. In the women's race, we do have riders just starting into the Ocean Boulevard. We'll jump in with them in just a moment as we get the feed up here, as it looks like it's 61 racers amongst the women here, absolutely hammering. Everybody be exiting the underwater tunnel here in just a moment. We'll get them up on screen. One of our feeds is struggling to come on over, but we will get that up in just a moment there. But Howell here now toward the front now, 4.4 watts, because we're going to be taking a left-hand turn past the windmills, and 5.6 here coming from Pithy as well. Marshall's there toward the front from SAP, it looks like, and Kim Little has jumped into the race out of the UK, but does look like a split has happened a little ways back. Looks like well over 150 plus riders have made this initial split here, but as they head into the dust looking for a wheel in front of them here, Cowley here along with, it looks like Lisa, and then Kalma at the back here, and this is where people are struggling a little bit. Collins, Leslie, Mellow Johnny out there as well, and with this climb coming in and suffering at this point, this is one of the worst places to be at, knowing that this absolute monstrous really it's a monstrous gradient. It's not a very long climb, but it is a very, very sharp climb. And to be at 187, right here, dangling off the back, this is the place where you start to see things snap.
Certainly, and the other thing is too is that we talk about seconds in real life racing. So if you're a couple of seconds off, you wouldn't be really worried. But certainly in Zwift racing, once you get that 2-3 second gap, it's very hard to close, and you're going to need some real cooperation from those in front of you. And we see already gaps opening up at around the 75th wheel of the main group. So we can see them pushing massive power up here, 7 watts per kilo. That's really tough stuff. Raf Freenstein from Inform, we see him in there. We've got to give him a big thumbs up. He's riding from the Zwift HQ tonight in Melbourne, and we also see some young riders out there. I mentioned Pat Eddy before. He's sitting in the top 50. Blake Agnoletto also there close by, and Ben Lundbergen, an under-19 rider you mentioned earlier. It's great to see these young riders. They really do impress me.
Yeah, moving our way forward now as we do see these riders making their way toward the expansion here in just a moment. They are on the lower slopes of the reverse Watopia mountain climb here. They'll be exiting that in just a moment as we do head over the top of this bridge here in just a second here, but you can already see the split starting to happen here. 49th place or so with Horton here, as you were mentioning, from MGE. From Madison Genesis, actually. Interesting to see a Madison Genesis rider here jumping into the mix. Very cool, as this is one of the teams that was absolutely dominating the Northern Hemisphere Winter Series we recently had with KISS here. So cool to see him making his way toward the front end of the race, but with 49th place here, maybe falling off. Cridland here recently had a race actually out on Zwift with Cridland myself here. So this is a strong rider, it looks like. Well, comparatively maybe. At this point, falling off the back, though, 44th place. Be here trying to hang on as well. I guess the pace must be absolutely insane to have the likes of Fitney here falling off the back. Creel as well, which is an ex-South African champion here out on course. Actually still wearing the South African Championship kit here, so perhaps defending that here. But Cryogen making their way to the front here. But there is a split for sure. 10 seconds up here at this point. Alex West even. Oh, no, excuse me, not Alex West. T. West is out there from the indoor specialist. I did see a West out there. I thought perhaps West had fallen off the pace there. That was very much unlike him. But at the front here, it looks like Jones representing Turbo. 172 beats per minute and 6.2 watts per kilometer. I think he's really been the one that's turned the screws here and caused a lot of this pressure here.
Yeah, certainly, and the split is going to happen here, but do they have the legs to keep pushing the pressure? And when do we start to see some tactics take place in this series where people start to think about who has points and who doesn't? It's great to see David Stretton from Tasmania, under-17 rider. He's hanging on for all his life to try and stay in this front group. And like I said last week, this could be the real series that unearths some of the great future talents for cycling, not only in Australia, but around the globe. We also see Jack Aiken. He's right up there at the front for the Anchor Point team, should I say, and the Subaru Anchor Point team. They've actually done well. Last week, they got a couple of riders towards the front, but there was that massive split, just like what's happened here today, as Kyle Ward, that's off the front. And he took part in quite a few of the live events over summer in Australia. So he's a Zwift specialist, we'd call him. And he's taking advantage of this to push the pressure at 6 watts per kilo. His heart rate up to 175. And at the women's race, it looks like there's a select group starting to form off the front of about 15 riders.
Yeah, we did see in the women's race a solid group getting off the front here just a moment ago. And again, we will bring that feed up in just a moment here. We are a little bit of a struggle to bring it into the broadcast here, but it will be up in just a moment here. But we'll follow along with the women as we are following on Zwift Power, as well as some of our feeds that are in front of us as they do make their way on over toward the jungle circuit now. So Ward and Beck here. Now, Beck, we did award last week from the community most courageous rider. Now, going along with Ward, up and over the top of that climb. They will be heading into the jungle circuit proper here for 3 laps in just a moment. And back seeing that only 6-second back, that Hulk Smash is trying to make his way to that group that is broken off the front here. 6 seconds is all it is. Alex West there riding for Canyon. It looks like another indoor specialist there sitting in with Matt Brandt, and he's not going to do any work. Zach Johnson, another rider here from Jackback CT, definitely very strong rider, and we saw him super active in both the races last week, the Chop Series that we are doing on Thursdays, as well as the SRAM Send It Series on Tuesday. So watch out for Zach here to be sitting in. It looks like biding his time, maybe waiting for that climb on the jungle circuit at this point, knowing that this break is going to come back.
Yeah, look, you've got to ride. You've got to have your own tactics. Just because it's a virtual race doesn't mean tactics don't come into it. We saw Ollie Jones time it to perfection in the sprint last week. A rider I really want to keep our eye on tonight, though, is Jack Aiken. I mentioned him before from Subaru Anchor Point, and he's really the type of rider that'll go well on Zwift. He's an ex-long-distance runner. He has a great endurance capacity. He's transferred over to cycling in the last 18 months, had a few setbacks. He had a crash, broke a collarbone. He came back and he was in the front group of the Melbourne Warrnambool, one of the hardest one-day races in Australia late last year. And then he showed his form again at the Grafton Inverall, the second hardest race, in my opinion, one-day race in Australia. So he's got the ability. He's sitting in the pack in top 20. He's up there with Zach Johnson and the likes. And I think he'll be one to watch towards the end, and particularly on a tough circuit, he'll really get the chance to put his nose out in front. We spoke about courageous riders. And we're picking our courageous riders again this week. The community riders, they'll be winning a swag pack from Zwift, and they'll be getting your details after the race to send those out. And also, we've got a very special prize, an official prize for the National Road Series riders that are competing in the SRAM Senate Series.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. It's great to see that these prizes are going to be rewarded to the riders here, official prizes as well as some goodies here coming from Zwift and SRAM here. Now, Jay Pill here now making the way to the front out of Denmark, riding from the European area up against some of the Southern Hemisphere. He was definitely one to be watching out for last week as well. We've got this elite group that has split off the front here at this point. I'm not sure they're going to be coming back. The chase, though, only 19 seconds here at this point with CrowdGen to the front. They've got, it looks like, 1, 2, 3, 4 riders here. Team Skoda there. It looks like Marshall here, SAP, Lions, Hedger, P-Speed hanging out in there as well. M. Rich here trying to get back on terms. A little ways back from that. Osberg here from Dirt, as well as Andy Bav. And then Fittenby here. There's still some firepower back here. This could come back. The top 40 or so, top 50 even, still have plenty of firepower, plenty of matches, I think, to burn to try and come back to these races that have broken away. It's going to be a tall order. And the front group, though, if they do lull it all, especially on that climb on the jungle circuit, as they leave those lower parts of this jungle circuit and the Mayan villages out here, perhaps be able to bring this back if they put in a big effort. Probably snap this group in half, splintered a little bit for the chase. But this race is definitely not over for those top 20.
Oh, definitely not. And as you mentioned, there's some real firepower there. Cam Roberts, we need to mention him. He's always up there, and he's always pushing hard. Zach Johnson, these are the guys that we're mentioning every week. Kieran Lewis, who represents Rafa Cycling Club, and as we mentioned, he's racing tonight from Zwift HQ. They're always the same riders. Alex West, he's always up there. But it's good to see some other riders getting in there as well, because they're learning the craft of Zwift racing. And I think that's a great thing, because we don't want to see the Cam Robertson and those likes taking it out every week. I can say in the front group in the women's race, Bree Wilson, who was the winner last week, she's still in there. And it's great to see riders of Justine Barrow and Emily Roper, leading riders in National Road Series, and very, very competitive over the summer in the biggest international races in Oceania. So it shows you this series keeps attracting the best riders. Chevron Aerosmith, she was in the top 3 last week, but slipping out the back as a breakaway now forms at the front in the women's race as 6 riders.
Yeah, it's good to see the talent that is in this women's race. Again, we'll bring that feed in as soon as we possibly can as we're having a couple technical difficulties on the women's race here side of things here. But Brandland here toward the front. It looks like Matt Brent here making his way as well. Cam Roberts here from GPM. This was a rider that was very cagey last week, very smart about his efforts out there. And we'll see if he can hang on to the likes of Ollie Jones, as Ollie Jones this week seems to be on a mission. Every time I make my way to the front of this race here, that is the name that we're seeing. It looks like Leicester here, though, as well, making his way to the front from the indoor specialist. This is no joke. I mean, you get up this early. This is mainly a North American team, and they're getting up at the crack of dawn here, getting out there to race Zwift. They're showing up with all the orange jerseys here, and watch out for the indoor specialists. You know, last week they put a lot on the table, maybe a little bit too much risk last week with the indoor specialists, as we did see Beck over and over again off the front, trying to break things apart. Matt Brent unable to hang on at a certain point into the sprint. Perhaps this week, Matt Gardner, another one I'd be watching out for. Obviously, there's a lot of orange in this front group now at this point, at least 4 riders from the indoor specialists, and they are focused, as their name says, on nothing but Zwift racing a lot of times. So watch out for these boys to be trying to steal that win here from all of those riders from the Southern Hemisphere, from their series. Show up and let them know that North America's here for even this series out here this week. I think some of the NRS riders, as well as the community riders, are going to have something to say that as well from your area of the world there. Kim Little here, though, off the front, 8 watts per kilogram real quick here. And this is a rider that you don't want to just let get away. And Lewis here does see that here. RCC now going to try and close things down, 7 watts per kilogram. But this might be the first snap of the elastic here on this jungle circuit, Pat. And they are not slowing down. I thought it might be hand holding, but it looks like they're going to light it up.
Well, as you mentioned early on, it was only 5 kilometres in, and we started to see some really big names getting dropped out the back, and that was evident that the power was on tonight and that the racers came to race seriously. I mean, Kim Little, he's no slouch, and every time he races, he's in the front. And if he's not in the front, he's definitely doing moves to create gaps and hurt riders. A reminder that they're community riders. They can ride any equipment they like, but the National Road Series riders competing in the SRAM Senate Series actually have limitations on what type of components they can put on their bike and the type of bikes they can use. So there's also ZADA, Zwift Anti-Doping Association coverage on the event as well. So the top 3 and two riders outside of the top 3 will be tested each week, their power data, to make sure everything's right. So it's everything's above board. But as you said, like, to see these Americans are getting up so early, and even the Europeans in a lot of ways, and to be competing in this series shows how much they respect the quality, and they want to put their own little point on the top of that eye as well.
They do, definitely. And we do see power-ups are on in this race here, and we do see that feather power up being used. A little bit of a 3% gradient. It does not get too sharp. We spoke about this a little bit. This gradient on this course only gets into the 4 or 5% at one point at the max. So it's definitely one of these where it's a little bit more cagey, a little bit more tactical of a climb, because you can definitely catch a draft. Now, if you just set the pace though high enough, 5-6 watts per kilogram at the front end of this race amongst these A racers here, you can perhaps send somebody off the back, or wait. There is a section of this course immediately after the climb. There is a suspension bridge, old rickety wooden suspension Aztec bridge that has a little bit of a descent and then a kick on the other side. That's probably the highest gradient actually on this course. Very sharp, very quick. But if somebody is over the limit at that point and you sprint off the front, it is a huge opportunity to try and get away, but the pace has to be very high to put somebody well into the red on this uphill. And it looks like we're starting to see some of that from Kyle Ward here. You were saying rabbits to the front. Brandland now starting to kick a little bit here. Some feather power-ups being used. For those who are unfamiliar with the power-ups, they are abilities that you do gain in the game as you do go through either a start-finish banner, a lap banner, sprint banner, a KOM banner. And the feather power-up we have been seeing used there does reduce the weight of the rider for 15 seconds by about a watt per kilogram or so. We obviously are always looking at the arrow power-up, another power-up that is extremely strong. Still probably the favorite in racing for a sprint situation to try and take the win, but it has been reduced by half in racing by to bring it back from 30 seconds to 15 seconds to be in line with the rest of the power-ups, which makes it not quite as strong and maybe not as race deciding. But power-ups are on today. One other power-up is there that you did see just a moment ago is the drafting power-up. That is that little truck that you just see overhead, and that does increase the draft that you're able to get from the other riders as all of the real-world physics that go along with racing, training, and riding with others have been replicated in the game. We do see some aero power-ups being thrown. Obviously, the pace is extremely high at this point. And here we go with Lewis toward the front. Ward's there as well. Kim Little trying to kick here off the front. But it's going to be, it looks like, Cam Roberts trying to follow the wheel of Howell here as they do come over that suspension bridge we spoke about. And they're trying to use that section. A little bit of a gaps here, but it looks like it most likely will stick together. Strong group of about 20 riders on the front here, Pat. The chase is on, but it might be said and done at this point with 55 seconds, almost a minute. That's going to be very difficult to bring back.
Yeah, it certainly is, and I know we're having some issues getting some coverage of the women's race, but we can certainly bring you some information. There's about 18 riders in the front group. It would really split to pieces at one point. There was 3 little echelons of about 7 riders. Of those, 18 riders have come together at the front. Bree Wilson, she leads the way, winner of last week's race. Brioni Maddox, she's right up there as well. Carly Taylor racing from Zwift HQ tonight. She's jumped across into that group as well. We mentioned Emily Roper, Chevone, Aerosmith, Georgie Whitehouse, Jennifer Pettinan, Taryn Heather's there, Matilda Reynolds is a really strong front group. Rhiannon Norton's there, Kirsty McCallum. It's really, really strong group out in front.
That's great to see. I am getting some information here as well. Carly Taylor out there hammering away in that lead group in the women's race. I'm going to take a look through here and see some of the watts per kilogram that they've been throwing out here so far. 4.6 watts per kilogram on average coming from Carly here. Chevron, you were saying, is in there as well, 4.1, 4.4. To make that lead group so far, with 14 kilometers in, you've had to put out at least 14 watts per kilogram or more to make that front, those front runners. It is a group, it looks like you said, about 15 or so, maybe 16 riders that have been able to make that front group. AHDR is being represented there. Vixen is out there as well for the community with the likes of Marlene Jarhead, as well as it looks like Kim Hurst. And as we said, Siobhan Aerosmith there riding for AHDR in the women's race. So we're doing our best to keep up with the coverage there, but that's the current situation for the riders now. So the front end of the race, though, in the men's situation now, 1 lap down out on the course here. We are here for 3 laps on the Jungle Circus. We're looking at third wheel riding for the KISS racing team from the community here. Zach Johnson for Drapic here riding for the NRS Series, one of the top teams for the National Road Series. They're out in the lands down under here, and it's going to be Alan Jones here from Turbo here making his way to the front. Atkin from SAP, Kyle Ward, as you were mentioning. Kim Little still sitting in, it looks like. As they're getting into a little bit of a hand-holding, they know that they have this gap at this point. 127 back. Tanaka here, as well as quite a few others. Jeffrey Creel, surprising. That shows you the level, Pat, that to make this kind of a break happen. Bettenby, Creel, which is South African national champion of Zwift, they obviously got caught a little bit off guard and found themselves in this chase. And that effort that was put out to make this lead group split must have been absolutely just bonkers.
Well, it is. And this is why I think that if you've not made this front selection this week, I mean, there's riders that have made a front selection this week that were well and truly dropped last week. You're going to realise just how crucial your first 5-minute power is, and then the ability to recover, not 100% because you're never going to at 4.5 watts per kilo, but to recover ever so slightly so you can just follow then that next one and that next one, because once you get through that, you get down to this small group, you get these surges that are happening, but then it all comes back together again. And as they do that, the group helps one another. Everyone fatigues close enough to equally. And that's where Cam Roberts really, you've got to take your hat off to him. He's very smart with his energy use, and that's why he'll always be strong towards the end. We saw Uzbel last week. He was amazing towards the finish and nearly took it out with a late move, and he's back in there again this week. He's not part of the SRAM Send It series in the National Road Series competition, but he certainly has put his mark on it in the community side of things.
Hughesball here, coming out of Denmark, man. Definitely one to always be watching out for, especially in the sprint situation here. Played it smart. In the upper left-hand corner, you can see the current wattage that the riders are putting out, 530 watts or so, 153 beats per minute here, as you can see. It looks like the riders definitely have calmed down. And this is, you can see when the heart rates drop like this, but a little bit of kicks here and there, though. We saw for a moment there 350, 400 watts there just for a second as they do come through for the lap, starting lap 2 of 3 out here. And 2 more laps to go out on this jungle circuit. Zawadzki there, Johnson now. Lots of vision kits here as well. So the indoor specialists as well as the vision team have shown up for the Descended series here. Who's left in this front group, though? That's the question for the NRS riders here. Is it just Zach Johnson? No, Cam Roberts, I believe, as well, too. No, Cam's got a duo here going on. Go ahead, Pat.
Yeah, Kieran Lewis is there as well. And as I mentioned earlier, a rider I really want to keep my eye on. He's right at the back of the pack at the moment. Just moving up now is Jack Aiken. He sits in about 18th at the moment. Then you've got Zach Johnson there as well. He's representing. So we've got 4 riders in this front group that represent their National Road Series teams in this SRAM Senate series. And we spoke about this last week. It's one thing to make that group, but then you've got to beat the other riders so you get the maximum points. And that's something Cam Roberts did really well last week. He ended up taking out the National Road Series section of the SRAM Senate series by just following the wheels and being the strongest of the National Road Series riders. You don't have to beat everyone. Yes, it's nice. Ollie Jones did that last week and he was amazing, but this is going to be like a point score. You just got to keep getting the points. And in actual fact, Jack Aiken's teammates in the Subaru Ankle Point team are also represented in numbers back down the field. The youngest riders that are still doing well back further is Ben Cross for the GPM team. He's back about a minute and a half, but he sits in 7th place overall in the SRAM Center Series for today's classification. Over at the women's, they've really lifted the pace, and now we're down to just 12 riders in that front group. So they're really starting to take some shape too. And their average has been around the 4 watts per kilo to 4.5 watts per kilo for the entire event so far. And it just shows you're not getting an easy race on Zwift.
Not one bit, that's for sure. As far as easy goes, it's nothing but smashing absolutely the watts here, and it's just a hammer fest here. Ward here, 2 attacks coming from Ward. Been followed up here very quickly by Gardner from the indoor specialist. Kyle Ward definitely being aggressive on the front here. And Gardner seen as an opportunity to grab a wheel and then come over the top. 181 beats per minute here. Only a 2-second gap, and it looked like from AHDR it is going to be smash, a Hulk smash, I think that is. 166 beats per minute, one of the community members here with a little bit of a cheeky name in the race here. But Atkin here now, Atkin, Jack here's SAP now trying to go across 194, one of the riders that you mentioned here. And it looks like he's going to pull this group right on back, but the heart rate is absolutely through the roof here for the rider out of Australia now, as he is just maybe trying to hold on. As we do see, he must have a heart rate, though, up into the 200s if he's sitting at 195 and climbing still, putting out 7.2 watts per kilogram. And this just goes to show the caliber that we're looking at here. But Gardner here with that attack, unable to get enough breathing room to stay away here at this point. They're starting to lap some riders up ahead, as we've got Powell and a few others that have fallen back from any of the groups and will get lapped as this lead group comes on through. About halfway through the climb here, a couple of powers being used as people are trying to hang on, as the pace has been very fast onto this second climb through the jungle circuit. 180 beats per minute here coming from, it looks like, Gardner. Anybody falling off? Not quite yet. A little bit of suffering here from Zawadzki here, using that feather power up here. Howell here just trying to hang on. Actually, no. Third wheel from KRT, KISS Racing Team. Now, said and done, it looks like here. And then a little ways forward here, Kim Little just trying to hang on. But I don't think that's from suffering too much at 158 beats per minute. I think that was just a moment of hesitation, not wanting to use too much of his effort just as yet. I think he's looking for that sprint finish here. At the back here, Alex West again from Canyon. Some of these heavier hitters at the back here sitting in, I believe they think this is definitely going to be a sprint finish with the way that they're riding this right now, Pat.
Yeah, I think they're a bit scared of last week. The real aggressive moves went off the front, but they all came back together for that sprint finish. But this is definitely a tougher race than last week. And I think the riders, should I say, are feeling the fatigue and feeling tired. The aggressive nature of last week was more of attacks going off the front and then coming back on their own. Tonight, they've sort of been pegged back by the group little bit by little bit, which tends to push towards the fact that those riders are contributing equally amount in that chase group. So I think the fatigue's pretty even across the board, and it's going to be difficult to pick a winner going down to the line. Just 8 riders remain in the front in the women's race, and now a bit of a gap forming behind that as we see a big chase coming from Taryn Heather and Kirsty McCallum to make the juncture back across that front group. It's such strong racing from last week's winner, Bree Wilson. Another chaser even further back than that is coming from Renata Butcher. Now, she's riding all the way from Switzerland, representing her team Attacker, and that's a big shout out to her because that's a big effort to jump on the bike that early. In that front group too is Marlene Barhead from Sweden. So some international flavour there, but predominantly Australians in the front group. Going to be interesting. Our own Carly Taylor right up there as well, and Emily Roper. I think she's one of the most exciting riders in the Australian cycling scene at the moment.
Well, speaking of Carly Taylor, we do have some live shots here coming from Zwift Australia. And looking through here, Carly on the left-hand side of that shot that we've just brought in there in the women's race. She's getting a little bit of coaching, I believe, along here as she's trying to hang on to the front there. And it's absolutely hammering, though, it looks like, Carly. And who else is in the shot here that we do have? I'm seeing a couple of other riders toward the front of the go ahead there, Pat.
Yeah, on the right-hand side. So the closest in the shot in the white is Raphael Freenstein. Right in the middle is Albi Ilquani. He's right in the front there on the giant, driving it as Carly waves to us. And then there he is, Albi. Cheers, Albi. And then over in the far left, that's Kieran Lewis. Now, he's right in that front group. So Kieran Lewis has made the front group, sitting in about 6th at the moment. And shout out right on to Carly Taylor. She's right on the front of the women's race at the moment, putting the herd on at 4.5 watts per kilo. So great to see some live images as well. And if you've got some photos of you or a bit of footage of you riding, post it in the chat below and on the community boards, because that's a big aspect of the Zwift racing and the Zwift scene is the community aspect. It's a great way to meet others, and it certainly is a great way to enjoy your Zwift experience even more.
Good to see one of the live riders there as well, making the front group here. It looked like very focused there on the far left-hand side of the screen just a moment ago. So we'll see if they can make the sprint here. But the pace has been so incredibly high, and with Cam Roberts attacking it for a moment there as they came up and over the top of the climb for their second time and headed over the suspension bridge, he did actually cause one of his Vision teammates that he rides for when he's racing mainly for the community to fall off the back, and that is Zawadzki here from Vision, unable to hang on, went right along with the likes of Third Wheel here. So definitely been fast enough. And here's Cam Roberts. He's the one who pressed the pace and caused everybody to chase things down. And now at this point, that's whittled things down to about 21 riders here with Zach Johnson. Zach here, a little bit quieter this week. I think he might be licking his wounds from not taking the win last week.
And I think he listened to a bit of our feedback. He's an exciting young rider. He's got the talent, but he just needs to really get that the mentality right. And I think that's even in real life racing. I've been a big fan of Zach's, and I just would love it for him to. I don't think it's a lack of backing himself in, but maybe just some conviction, some self-belief that he could go later, or even put the pressure on the other riders a bit. Don't try and animate the race always yourself. It'd be great to see Zach Johnson put in a good effort tonight. And he really, if he does, he's going to go close to leading the overall series, because he was third on last Tuesday in race 1 of the SRAM Senate Series. So he's really got himself with some handy points there already. In the women's race, it's come back together a little bit with 11 riders in the front. Jennifer Pettinen for Gusto, presented by Suzuki, has made it to the front again. So she's had a big ride for the Sydney Uni Staminade team. Georgie Whitehouse, she's found herself in the front group. She's an exciting young rider to watch too. Kirsty McCullum for the KOM Financial right up the front. And Bree Wilson, last week's winner, she continues to push towards the front as well. This KOM Financial team, they have got 3 riders in this front group, and they did the same last week. So as far as options, they got plenty.
That's for sure. I am looking at the watts per kilogram. Bree Wilson's put up 4.2 so far, but Carly Taylor with that 4.5, absolutely smashing it out here. Hanging with this women's race here. It is over the top of the A category men's a lot of times, almost A plus category for those that might know about the addition of that over on ZwiftPower.com recently. This is some serious efforts and real just hammerfest here coming from the women here. Bree Wilson, Emily Roper, Georgie Whitehouse in there. We are seeing it. Justine Barrow here, Kim Hurst, Kirsty McCallum, Taryn Heather. We're seeing Katie Banerjee, it looks like, Marlene Jarhead, and then it's going to be Jen Pettinson as well. Off the back just a little bit, it looks like Butcher as well as Matilda Reynolds has fallen off the back there. Chevron Aerosmith just hanging on, it looks like here. It is a solid group at the front of this race. They're mixing them into some of the men here at this point, but as they do catch some of those that fell off the front of the front pace in that front group now. But it is going to be Edkin here now again. SAP. Now this is the animation of the race going into the final lap here and into the final climb. And if you are not a sprinter, this is where you got to start. It's not a long climb. And so because of that, if you do not really push the pace early enough and send those heart rates high enough, you will not be able to put the pressure on enough and get enough of a gap. And I think that Jack knows this, and that's why he's throwing down almost 7 watts per kilogram right now.
Well, it's been a very big move from him, much like it was for Roper on the other side of just behind on the course in the women's race. She's trying to split the race from behind, but Jack Aiken, I spoke about him before we sort of got right into tonight's race. He's an exciting rider, and he's really putting the pressure on some of these more experienced riders in Zwift. If he can keep this up, it's going to be difficult to see who will bring him back, because those who chase him will definitely sacrifice their own result. And he's putting himself out the front and having Cam Roberts and Zach to think about, well, we got points last week and Jack Aiken not. Do we just let him take it tonight and then we think about next week, because we're going to secure good points? So this is where the tactics come into it a fair bit. But in any way of looking at it, this is a massive effort from Jack Aiken.
Huge effort here coming from him, but Kyle Ward making sure it's not going anywhere as he presses the pace here. Ollie Jones following the wheel there of Kyle Ward, it looks like there at 6.3 watts per kilogram sitting in. And Aiken here put the hurt on, but at almost 200 beats per minute, I think it might be caught. And will we see a counterattack is going to be the question here at this point. Lewis here along with Beck here coming through now. Who's coming through with that feather power up, though? It looks like, is it Howell? No, it is going to be, yes, it is Howell. Excuse me, Howell here coming through now. 156 beats per minute, 490 watts now at this point. And with the 1 second gap here, it's a little bit of a break, but Howell unable to find too much of a wiggle room there. K Ward here. Kyle now trying to come on another attack. This is the moment to go. If they're going to do it, that needs to be now a counterattack after that initial attack there coming from Aiken here. And it will be Ward here making his way to the front. 7.3 watts per kilogram with the feather power up here now. Will he be able to hang on to this gap? I think we may be seeing a sprint finish, because the reality is we have the likes of Beck, Gardner here. Roberts is still sitting in there. I mean, we've got so much firepower back there. We would have to see the most insane attack off the front here, halfway to the top of this climb now. Gibson here coming on through. This is one of the riders that made a last-minute effort as well last week. Watch out for Gibson here. Ginger sitting on for the KRT. Zach Johnson, though. Is it going to be Johnson? 9 watts per kilogram, not caring for the sprint. We spoke about this, that he was sitting in and waiting, that he did not animate the race like we saw last week. Almost 9 watts per kilogram, 193 beats per minute. Can he get the gap that he needs? No, the riders know that Johnson is one to watch out for, and they immediately close it down. Ollie Jones, last week's winner, is the one to do so here. Will they find anybody off the back, though, at this point and splinter this at least to give their chances a little higher in the sprint? But I believe this is going to stick together as it starts to calm down toward the front here, and unable to do anything with it. The last chance to make this split happen will be over the top of the suspension bridge. They're all into almost max heart rates. 190 beats per minute for Jack Johnson. Hill to the front here, 171 here. Alex West, 173. The Canyon ZCC team, watch out for them, that's for sure. Alex West, this is one rider from the community I'd be watching out for the win here today. He's been very quiet so far, and the boy can sprint.
Yeah, we haven't seen a lot of movement from riders in the men's event. It's been the same riders quite a lot. You did speak about Zach. He hasn't done a lot. That wasn't really his best attack, so I think we're going to see another one from him. We haven't seen Cam Roberts or much of him. He's been in the group all night. We haven't seen a lot of him. Kieran Lewis has been pretty quiet. He's right there and ready to strike. Ollie Jones, last week's overall winner, is still there as well. I'm pretty impressed with Jack Aiken tonight, though, I've got to admit, because he's still in there even after that big attack. That was several minutes at quite a high heart rate. He's still sitting at 196 beats per minute. As we take a check-in with the women, there's 9 riders in the front group. Then there's a genuine break back to a group of 3, which is Pettinan, McCallum, and Maddox. But in the front group, Wilson, Taylor, Roper, Barrow, Hurst, Whitehouse, and Heather are all there representing a National Road Series team. So going to be an interesting finish for the women as well.
We're just looking at the first-person view there of Alex West of his avatar, looking at what it looks like to try and grab the draft here in and amongst the riders. A lot of riders will use that first-person point of view, especially in these crucial moments to really know exactly where the draft is at for those riders. Every little bit does matter as far as hitting it perfectly, especially coming into these final few meters here in just a moment here to reserve every last ounce of energy, because a lot of times it comes down to hundredths of a second. I mean, it can be split by just 1/100th of a second or even less a lot of times, especially in a group like this at the speeds that we're going to see coming in here. Zach Johnson, though, like you said, was not interested in just sitting around. He is sacrificing everything at this point here. Hulk Smash trying to chase things down here, but he's going to need at least 15 seconds at this point to open up 15 seconds at this point out on course. Not sure it's going to be happening here, Pat. I think this is most definitely going to be a sprint group finish here. We're going to have to start calling out some of our favorites. We're going to have a finish here in just about 2 to 3 minutes.
Well, I think for the finish, it's all sort of stayed together a bit more than I expected. And I would suggest that I'm going to be a bit boring and go with my same choice as last week. He's just too strong in the finish, Ollie Jones. But certainly we've got to also start thinking about our rider of the day, our most courageous rider in both the community and in the National Road Series, which is going to be a tough choice, I think, in the community one in particular.
Yeah, this is going to be, I mean, so far we have seen quite a few attacks here. You know, the aggression here coming from the riders as far as the most courageous so far. It is definitely a hard call here. Looking at just from those who have done the work, though, at the front end of this race so far, there's been so many attacks there, but it was, I believe, Kyle Ward. Oh, no, and Lewis here with the dropout at the worst time that you could possibly have, at the moment that they hit the bottom of that descent. Lewis has a little bit of a mechanical, unable to keep things going there. Maybe a shifting issue. Who knows what happened there, but Lewis now off the back, 9 watts per kilogram at the moment that you're looking to rest here and no longer involved here at the front end. But Kyle Ward, though, I believe, has been one that has put out over 5 watts per kilogram for the race out there today. He has done nothing but close gaps or try and make a gap happen. And I'm going to have to award, as far as the community goes here, to Kyle Ward here. But now an attack here off the front again. Coming from, it looked like a Vision rider here. It's Gibson here going now. We saw this from him here from him last week with about a kilometer to go. He goes and catches everybody a little bit off guard. This is that lull time that we talk about a lot of times coming into a sprint where everybody's kind of watching each other, and he may have timed this perfectly to try and stay away. But at 13 watts per kilogram with an arrow power about, Hughesball here looking to hang on, looking for the upset again here. Gardner's going with a drafting power, but did Hughesball get enough of a gap here to hang on? And where's the pack? The pack is coming on like a freight train at this point, as Gardner has a gap as well. It's 3 seconds. Brandlin's now leading them out at 14 watts per kilogram. Will Brandlin be able to make it happen? Here comes Brandlin out of Squeedlin there. It's coming right to the line. Well, Brandlin's leading it out, Is he going to be able to make it happen as they come around the corner here? He's hanging on, and it's going to be Brandlin, followed up by, it looked like, Jones at the line here. We'll have to wait and see, though, for the official results as they do come through. We'll see if we can go ahead and work our way back here. But one thing that we need
Cam
there
Roberts
from you
is
still.
taking it out from, Cam Roberts has taken it out from the National Road Series team's perspective. Jack Aiken did very well to stay up there for second, I believe. Zach Johnson will take third. So that in the SRAM Senate Series for the men in race 2, there will be Roberts from Aiken and Johnson for the podium in the National Road Series. And I'm awarding the most courageous ride for the evening in the National Road Series men's to Jack Aiken. Hands down, his pockets are full with kudos and thumbs up from all of the riders on the Zwift tonight. And they have really enjoyed his ride, and so did I. So Jack Aiken of the Subaru Anchor Point team, congratulations on a big ride, taking out second, but certainly the most courageous rider.
Absolutely great job there from all the NRS riders there for sure. Now, the reason we're speaking about the two different series there, we have the community that is showing up and is racing out there for the series, and then we also have the National Road Series racers that have been invited from specific teams that are competing with their own competition. So absolutely amazing job to them. The results for the overall here, Samuel Brandlin there hammers away, winning by 0.191 seconds there. Over to the indoor specialist, Matt Gardner, their Hulk smash there from THDR. Ollie Jones, last week winner, just off the podium. Lars Hughesbo, who led things out there, was unable to hang on there, half a second back. Alex West, I thought for sure Alex was going to be able to take things down there today, but unable to hang on to the line. And it looks like Jesper Egertoft there, and then Matt Brandt for the indoor specialist. And it's going to be Cameron Roberts there for vision, and Ryan Larson for the indoor specialist. So that's the situation there for the men's sprint there. Let's see if we can bring in the replay for everybody while we do wait for the women's finish. We'll see if we can get them up on screen, hopefully, before the end of the race for them here. But this was the situation for the sprint there as they came to the line. It was Hughesball who went first, then Brandlin here who came across there at 15 watts per kilogram very quickly, able to shut that down as he comes by Hughesball there. No one was able to close it down to Brandlin there. And to the line, just a little ways back, Ollie Jones back and smashed there, hammering it out. But Gardner there hidden a little ways behind the rest of the riders and then snuck in there for second just behind Brandlin there. So Samuel Brandlin, Matt Gardner, Hulk smash. That is your podium of the top 3 in the men's race here. For the women's results here, we'll have them up here in just a moment. But Pat, I mean, amazing race there from all of the riders. Do we have any updates here on where things are at for the women? I think they're just a couple of seconds back, or a couple of minutes back from the situation in the men's race for their finish.
Yeah, look, they're about 3.75 kilometres from the finish, and they're not mucking around. Group of 7 or 8 towards the front. There's no foreigners, let's say, no internationals in there now. The Swedish rider of Bachhead has been dropped. She's 20 seconds behind now. She won't be getting back at this stage because there's too much firepower in that front group. But our front group made up of 7 riders. Taryn Heather, Banerjee's there, Barrow, Taylor, Carly Taylor, she's been in great form. I think she might be secretly doing some Zwift training each day. Bree Wilson right up there, and also Georgia Whitehouse and Emily Roper. Kim Hurst rounding out that front group, and they are motoring along. But I'm trying to think of probably the fastest rider there. I think she put in a really good sprint last week, Bree Wilson, but Taryn Heather's got to be one to watch for this final.
Yeah, definitely a lot of riders able to make this front group here for the women now. As you said, Taryn Heather for the Specialized Women's Racing team there out there. I'll be watching out for her. I think that she's looking for a little bit of revenge out there for the race here out here today. We're looking to try and get some of the pictures here for you for the finish for the women here in just a moment. We do have one of the men's sprints here about to come across the line, and if they do allow us back to the women's race here after they do sprint things out here amongst them. GPM here, though, it looks like across the line here. Mackenzie as well, and then it's going to be, it looks like Amaury here, maybe along with Cross, just a little ways back behind him for GPM. So some more of those National Road Series riders here coming across the line just a moment ago. We do make our way backwards here as it does leave the event momentarily. It may give us an opportunity to take a look at the women, but I believe that that for this event specifically, the reason we're unable to find them is once you are out of the event, it is kind of locked for you at this point. So no matter how much we do click backwards, we're unable to get back into it at the moment here. But with just another kilometer, a couple kilometers to go here for the finish, as you did see here, Bree Wilson, it looks like 4.3 watts per kilogram has been absolutely hammering away so far. And I believe Bree might be one to watch out for the sprint. She proved herself amongst a lot of the men last week, but things were a little bit different last week, Pat, for the women's situation. There is the reality that they were mixed in with some of the men last week, and because of that, a lot of riders got some advantage perhaps to sit in and have a sprint at the end that they might not have this week, having just women to be around and having to, only compete against each other and push against each other and not get that as much of a free ride and not have as many attacks maybe against each other throughout the race, Pat.
Yeah, a bit more of a solid continual pace. But at this same stage, Bree Wilson, she was the winner last week. She's in the front group this week. Taryn Heather was right up there as well. So those riders definitely showing that it didn't matter. But we saw in the men that a lot of the men in the bigger group got lost. And that happened last week too. Some of the women got caught out, where some of the more experienced women got right to the front in the early part and just hung tight for that first 15 minutes. And it really made the gap so big, the other ladies couldn't make their way back. But right at the front, trying to take no risks at all. She wants to go solo, Emily. She's tried multiple times, but it's Wilson, Whitehouse, Barrow, and Banerjee that are in this front. Taryn Heather, she claws her way back with also Kim Hurst. So this group at the front really strong as Bree Wilson, she's missed this jump. She starts to drop off ever so slightly. They've got to be close towards the finish now. 9 kilometers to go, in fact, and averaging over 4 kilo, 4.4 watts per kilo is about the average across the board in this women's race this evening. The race 2 of the SRAM Women's SRAM Senate Series, and Carly push up now, and they're really getting close now, about a minute and a half from the finish line.
Yep, minute and a half to go from the finish line here, and we are seeing about the top 100 in the men's race just finishing up here, and they're just ahead of the main group of the women here, as perhaps we'll be able to catch here just the finish of the women's race. Again, apologies to everybody out there that's looking for the coverage of the women's race. We did lose our feed early on, and some technical difficulties out there, and because of those, we were unable to bring the feed back in here, but we will be able to give you the results here of the women's race, as well as a little bit of data out there. We'll look at the raw data perhaps for what happened out here out on course to tell you exactly what the most courageous riders were from the community, as well as the National Road Series races as well. We do see Kiyoshi here out of Japan here, 124 in the men's race. It looks like Jay Craddock here trying to close that down here as they finish out their sprint. They're just ahead of the women's finishers here. And it looks like Georgie Whitehouse with a 2-second gap here trying to get the win from quite a ways out, I believe. I believe Georgie here, I am seeing, according to the ZwiftPower.com results here, was able to hold on at the end there. We do have the women's results here coming right on, and it is going to be Georgie Whitehouse, one of the NRS riders there, with Emily Roper here, Kim Hurst coming through in third, Taryn Heather there for Specialized Women Racing. It's going to be Katie Banerjee there coming from the KOM. Carly Taylor, who was just passionate completely from Zwift Australia, coming in for 6th. Justine Barrow then. And then Bree Wilson, last week's winner, still in the top 8, but unable to repeat that win with 3 seconds back there. So out of the, for what we do have, we weren't able to have a lot of the images out there, but we do have a lot of raw data, looking at this, as well as a lot of attacks there. It looked like from the information that we did get sent in. Pat, what are we thinking here for the women's side of things as far as the most courageous rider from the NRS riders?
Well, she gave it a last-ditch attack over the final rise. So Emily Roper takes out my most courageous national road series. Actually, I think she might not be in the road series, so she might have taken out the community one, which is a bit rude of me to take your award. But I was thinking I was going to give you a nudge and sort of say maybe Marlene Barhead, who made the front group from Sweden, as your community. But now that I've taken Emily Roper, having seen that she's not part of the National Road Series, I'm probably going to have to go with, I don't want to do it, but Carly Taylor.
Yeah, I was going to say, Carly Taylor there, an amazing effort there. I was actually going to say for Carly Taylor there, she was hammered away early on in the race. We saw her almost into 5 watts per kilogram. Now, we are not seeing her in the top 10, so obviously she suffered for that. Ended up off the back there, but Carly absolutely killing it out there amongst the community racers there as well. I'm going to go ahead and name Georgie Whitehouse most courageous rider as well as winner today. The reason being, from the NRS side of things, the reason being there for the attack that she made there without being a part of the group, she gained 2 seconds. It wasn't a full-on normal sprint, I believe, where you have this pack coming into the finish. But instead, it was a last half a kilometer break that she caused, and Georgia Whitehouse there were able to break away and take the win. So amazing job all around there. And we will be back here next week, obviously, for the SRAM Send It series for race number 3. Make sure not to be missing that. Also, we've got the Chop. Pat, speak a little bit about the Chop. There might be some viewers out there coming from other parts of the world that are like, what is this Chop racing thing we've got coming up on Thursday? Nobody's going to want to miss that.
No, and first and foremost, don't forget that even if you're not finishing in this front group, if you complete 5 of the 6 SRAM Send It series races, you go into the draw to win that Axis Force ETAP group set, and that's valued at over $2,800 US. So that's an amazing prize. But the Chop series kicking off again on Thursday. We saw a great race on last Thursday. A grade won't be happy. The gaps are out to 2 minutes for them to B grade for this week. And so if you want to get along and ride with your grade, you get a handicap based on your ability, your watts per kilo average, race against the others, almost in a team's time trial aspect. And we look forward to bringing it to you on Thursday night around the same time, 7 o'clock.
Yeah, it'll be great. Make sure to be signing up for the Chop. Jump on into your companion app now and sign on up, and you'll be able to. That's the cool thing about the Chop racing, handicap racing. Everybody's involved for the win in those races. SRAM Send It series ending here for race number 2 out on the Jungle Circuit. Make sure to tune in next week, Tuesday, for race number 3. That's going to be it from myself and Pat Shaw for today's racing. As always, everybody, thanks a lot for tuning in. Hit those follow buttons for more live racing out on Zwift. And as always, ride on.